Hi, I'm Brad Oaster, and today we're at step number 9 of our 10-step process on how to equip you to move your congregation from temporary facilities at the Y.M.C.A, at a theater, at a local school perhaps, out of that facility onto land and into a permanent home. Or maybe you've just outgrown an existing facility and you need to expand that facility or even relocate it. We have a 10-step process on how to equip you to do that. And today we're talking about number 9, which is our construction financing. How do you go about getting that, and how do you know whether you're getting the best deal, and how do you set that all up? There are a lot of different ways to go out and finance projects. Most people, when they're looking at a construction loan, just go the traditional route. They can go to the bank and say, hey, Mr. Banker, we need to borrow a bunch of money to build this building. The bank will or will not sometimes give you a construction loan. You draw on that loan, you pay interest as you draw on it, and then at the end of it, they flip that into a long-term takeout loan, otherwise known as a mortgage. Most of the projects in the United States today, church construction, are probably done that way. And they're done with traditional banks. We helped set up, actually, the church loan division at Bank of the West back in 1985. Back in 1985, nobody would lend to a church. They always felt that lending to a nonprofit was very risky, and that if you ever had to foreclose, it would be the big bad bank, that's foreclosing on the poor nonprofit. It would be a public relations nightmare. So Bank of the West, Wells Fargo, Crocker Bank, none of the banks out in the Bay Area in California would lend on any of my projects. The two banks that would were Sumitomo and Sanwa. And the reason is they're Japanese banks. For them, it's business. They'd foreclose on their mother. It's business, right? So we did a lot of work with Sumitomo and Sanwa, but they charged us a lot of points up front, and they charged us several points above prime, so it was expensive, kind of the only game in town, so we had to go that route. Eventually, I got fed up with that and thought, what we should do is put together a bunch of different churches and go bank shopping together. So we put together a group of about 10 different large churches. And together we had about a $30 million annual operating budget. So I went and talked to Bank of the West, and they said, no, gee, Brad, that's impressive, but we're not going to do it. Other banks, Bank of America, Crocker Bank, First Interstate Bank, we went to all of them. Nobody would talk to us. And I thought, well, maybe I need 50 million. So I started bringing in other churches into our group. Well, I went to a church called Church of the Highlands. It was in Millbrae, California. And the pastor there said, oh, we don't have a problem with borrowing because the president of Central Bank is the chairman of our board or elder board. And I thought, oh, I want to talk to him. So I got an appointment with him, went up to Walnut Creek. Their offices were on Treat Drive, sat down, said, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. We're trying to finance churches to get construction loans. None of the big banks will talk to us. Would you consider helping us to fund these projects? And if you did, we would move all of our business to your bank. And he said, absolutely. So within a couple months, we put a lot of money into that bank. It was called Central Bank in Walnut Creek, California. Well, that went great because that bank, then Central Bank, would fund our projects for us. And they didn't just give out free money. But it was a reasonable fee as far as points and fees on a construction loan. And it was a competitive interest rate. It was what everybody else had to pay, not what the Japanese were charging us. That was great. And that went on for about 4 years, I think. And then one day I found out that Bank of the West had bought Central Bank. And the first thing they did is they shut down the church loan division, which killed all my projects. I had to go back to the Japanese banks, back to Sumitomo and Sanwa. So I went up and I met with the board of directors at Bank of the West and kind of what are you guys thinking? This was going just great. And you shut down the entire church loan division that you inherited with Central Bank. And they said, well, we don't lend to nonprofits. And they gave me the same old story everybody else did. Well, about 6 months went by and I got a phone call from the vice president up there at Bank of the West. And he wanted me to come up and meet with the board of directors. And so I did. And they wanted to know about the church development business in California. How big is this? And I said, well, I was here 6 months ago and you guys would hardly even talk to me. So why the interest? Well, after Bank of the West acquired Central Bank, they brought in a bunch of auditors to go through all the specialty accounts that they gained with the acquisition of Central Bank. The number one performing business that Central Bank had was their church loan division. It was outperforming everything. And Bank of the West wanted to start that up as quick as they could. And so within a couple months, they were back in business with the church loan division. They started out in California, then they went to Washington and Oregon and had the West Coast, then they went to the 11 Western states, and now they do funding for churches all across America, and they have billions of dollars in church loans out there. So banks are willing to work with us now, but it wasn't always that case. Now banking, again, is only one option. Another option is my friend Scott Rolfs. Scott's at BC Ziegler. They're up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and they do church bonds. So church bonds is a good option. Charles Major at Share Financial in Dallas does church bonds, and we've worked with Charles for 20 years. I've worked with Scott up in Milwaukee for 20 years. We've done bond programs all over the country. It's a very, very effective way to generate the funds that you need. And basically what you're doing is you're borrowing from your own congregation. You do these bonds, your congregation can buy the bonds, they buy as many as they want, and then both Share Financial and Ziegler will sell the balance on the open market. They have investors all over the country that put their money in church bonds. And so that's a great way to fund a project. It's a little more expensive up front because you have to set up the entire bond issue to do it. But you're locked in for the life of the loan. It's fully amortized and you're locked in on your interest rate for as long as that loan is. It could be 20 years, okay? With banks, whether it's Bank of the West or anyone else, nobody's locking in interest rates. At the most, you'll get a 5-year lock, which means at the end of 5 years, you have to refi that. And the bank wants you to do that so they can adjust the interest rate to whatever the current interest rate is. Well, folks, now is a great time because interest rates are still historically low. We're getting bank loans in the 4.5% range. Phenomenal, okay? If you've got a loan that's 4.5 or less, lock it in for as long as you can because odds are they're only going to go up. So we've got bond programs, we've got traditional banks. Another way that we do it is we set up a line of credit where you can have a line of credit with the bank and draw on that line of credit while your construction's going on. And then at the end of that, you take the total amount of the line of credit and just flip that into a mortgage. So there's a lot of ways to go about financing your facility. I know it's kind of complicated, and it's like when you buy a house. The banks are going to want more information than you could possibly imagine. My typical loan package that I put together for a church is probably about that thick when I get everything that they need. But we know exactly how to do it, so it doesn't surprise us. In fact, it surprises the banks because you walk in there, not only do you have what they initially said they wanted, but you have everything else they're going to tell you they want over the next 3 months, all right up front. So if I can help you with that in any way, feel free to call me. My telephone number is 719-439-3019. Drop me an email at bradoaster@mac.com or visit the website www.bradoaster.com. Now remember what Solomon said. Solomon said, seek wisdom, gain knowledge, it'll serve you well. And that's what we're here for. Our purpose is to help equip, empower, and encourage you to design the church of your dreams so that you can reach the lost, develop Christ-like disciples, and help to fulfill our instructions in the Great Commission. Thank you.